I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Recep Tayyip Erdogan, President of the Republic of Turkey, and to invite him to address the Assembly.
Burada sizlerin huzurunda tekrar ediyorum. Dünya 5'ten büyüktür. Zihniyetimizi de, kurumlarımızı da, kurallarımızı da değiştirme zamanı çoktan gelmiştir.
The United Nations is one of the world's leading and globally active institutions. The international organization was established in the aftermath of the Second World War to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. The United Nations Charter, which is the UN's founding agreement, was signed by 50 countries, including Turkey, on the 26th of June 1945 in San Francisco. The purposes of the United Nations are to maintain international peace and security, to develop friendly relations among nations, to achieve international economic and social cooperation, and to be a centre for harmonising the actions of nations. The main organs of the UN are the General Assembly, Security Council, Economic and Social Council, International Court of Justice, and the UN Secretariat.
The United Nations Charter sends a clear message to us all. Put people first. The first words of the Charter, we, the peoples, are a summons to place people at the center of our work.
This perspective scrutinises the origins, characteristics and implications of Turkey's call for a reform within the United Nations. The perspective argues that the existing UN system needs a thorough reform due to its shortcomings in the responding to the geopolitical, geo-economical and socio-cultural challenges in the post-Cold War era.
The most powerful states in the system create and shape organizations so that they can maintain their share of world power or even increase it. In that regard, international organizations are essentially arenas for acting out power relationships. So, the current United Nations reflects the dynamics of the Cold War period, not today.
The current problem of the UN system could be explained with reference to the systematic changes which took place in the post-Cold War period. Clearly, the collapse of the Soviet Union and its replacement by the Russian Federation transformed the international system as well as the balance of power upon which the UN had been based to a large extent. The United States currently represents about 20% of the world's economy. On one hand, the United States and China account for 40% of the world's GDP, and they have benefited greatly from each other's growing prosperity. On the other hand, emerging markets and developing countries account for half of the world's GDP and over 80% of global growth. Several reports predict that in 2035, the GDP of developing countries will surpass that of advanced economies, accounting for nearly 60% of the global economy and investment. Within this context, international relations scholars are discussing the expanding role of developing countries in influencing the development of international organizations.
But at the same time, we're seeing many developing countries embracing a lot of rules of international law. That means working together to solve the many common problems, whether it's about development, whether it's about climate change, whether it's about the questions of international trade.
The primary reason for the decreasing prestige of the United Nations and decentralized societies' anger is, without doubt, the Security Council. There are 3 countries from Europe, 1 country from Asia, and 1 country from American continents in the UN Security Council. International relations scholars regularly ask this question: what will happen to the rest of the world? For example, the Asian continent covers 1/3 of the world's total land, hosts 2/3 of the global population, and consists of 47 countries and more than 1,000 ethnic groups. Currently, the ratio of the number of permanent Security Council members to the number of General Assembly members is less than 3%. This states that only a few states seize power in the UN.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says that the world is bigger than 5. And Turkey says that at every opportunity, a total of 20 countries can be in the UN Security Council. They can be switched every 2 years by turn, and all the countries in the world can take their place to represent the entire world. According to the Turkish government, justice can only be served in that way.
The gap between the challenges of world politics and the capabilities of the UN has been widening since the end of the Cold War. The role of the UN in international crises such as Syria, Kashmir, Palestine, Israel dispute, poverty, climate change and rising Islamophobia and xenophobia symbolizes the chronic problems of ineffectiveness.
But terrorism, radicalization, inequality, exclusion, trade wars, forced migration, man-made humanitarian crisis, environmental problems, and climate change are threatening our peaceful era. They are weakening the immunity system of our planet and the human civilization.
Şayet her birimiz güvende değilsek, hiçbirimizin güvende olamayacağı gerçeğine sırtımızı dönemeyiz. Bu kürsüden yıllardır insanlığın kaderinin sınırlı sayıdaki ülkenin ihtiyarına bırakılamayacağını söylüyorum.
Hate speech is the most common means of increasing Islamophobia, populism, racism and xenophobia on a global scale. Muslims are ranked 1 in the list of those facing exasperating hate speech, cultural racism, discrimination and defamation against their sacred values. This is the primary reason why Muslim leaders are warning the United Nations and the international community against threats posed by rising Islamophobia and xenophobia on a global scale. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan harshly criticised those who linked Islam with terrorism at the 74th session of the UN General Assembly in September.
But Islam is not radical, neither Judaism, neither Christianity, neither Hinduism. No religion preaches radicalism. The basis of all religion is compassion and justice, which differentiates us from the animal kingdom.
The decline of the United Nations order horrifies liberal and globalist elites who were responsible for cheating it and who continue to benefit from their personal interest over the years. These elites believe that this order was and remains an important force for promoting peace and prosperity around the globe.
The future does not belong to globalists. The future belongs to patriots. The future belongs to sovereign and independent nations who protect their citizens, respect their neighbors, and honor the differences that make each country special and unique.
According to John Mearsheimer, one of the most prominent international relations scholars of our time, it would be a mistake to think that the liberal international order is in trouble solely because of some leaders, particularly Donald Trump, rhetoric or policies. In his article titled Bound to Fail, The Rise and Fall of the Liberal International Order, published by the International Security in 2019, Mearsheimer says there is likely to be a realist international order in the emerging multipolar world.
A multipolar world order emerges in the international arena on a daily basis. If the United Nations is to remain relevant, it needs to adapt to changing global geopolitical, geo-economic and social-cultural landscape and ensure that voices outside of the advanced nations are fairly heard.
A well-known African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. The pursuit of unilateralism may allow a country to develop rapidly for a limited period of time, but it will cause long-term harm and limit the development of other countries.
I think we should not stop and re-emphasizing the importance of rule of law, the importance of maintaining peace and security in the world order. The government must take note of the importance of multilateralism and respect for rule of law.
Benefiting from its membership in different groups and organisations, Turkey makes every effort to play a constructive and reconciliatory role in the United Nations. The developments taking place in the international arena since the establishment of the UN in 1945 necessitate reforming the institution and its operations on various fields. Turkey supports a reformational agenda that was initiated by the UN Secretary-General in 3 pillars, namely peace and security, management and development.
Turkey gives utmost importance to the United Nations as the only global organization that establishes norms for dealing with the problems multilaterally, protecting international peace and security, and strengthening human rights, as well as representing international legitimacy. Within this scope, Turkey will continue to enhance its effective and active contribution to the UN activities in every field.
In light of the aforementioned discussion, it is possible to sum up the problems relating to the United Nations Security Council. Permanent membership status and veto rights granted to 5 states comply with neither justice nor fairness. The Security Council has transformed into a platform used by some of the global hegemons, by the United States in particular, as a means to satisfy imperial motives and national interests. The Security Council draft resolutions are prepared behind closed doors most of the time through bargaining. This violates the principle of transparency as one of the most fundamental pillars of law and democracy.
Herkes için özgürlük, herkes için barış, herkes için refah, herkes için adalet, herkes için huzurlu ve güvenli bir gelecek.